Here is what you're going to be able to build by the end of this video. Check it out.
Hello, this is the leasing office for Summit Realty Group. How can I assist you today?
Hey, I was out driving today and I saw a for rent sign outside a house on Chestnut, I think it was. I was wondering if that one was still available.
Just a sec while I check that for you. Thanks for waiting. The property at 888 Chestnut Street in Hyde Park is available. It's a one-bedroom, two-bathroom home, and the rent is $1,250 per month with the same amount as a security deposit. What else would you like to know about it?
Actually, a one bedroom's not going to work for me, so I guess what other houses? I'm looking for probably a two bedroom somewhere on the east side, and I have a dog, so anything that is pet friendly as well.
Got it. You're looking for a two-bedroom on the east side that's pet-friendly since you have a dog. Let me take a look and see what we have available. One moment. Looks like we have a few options that might work for you. Let me tell you about a couple to start. First, there's a two-bedroom at 231 Laurel Drive in Norwood, which is on the east side. It's pet-friendly for small dogs, has a washer and dryer, and even a garden-ready backyard that could be great for your dog. The rent is $995 and it's available right now. Another option is at 2631 Ida Avenue, also in Norwood near Oakley and Hyde Park. It's a two-bedroom home with a fenced backyard, perfect for your dog, and it has modern updates and a balcony. The rent is $1,895 and it's also available now. Do either of these sound like something you'd like more details about, or should I share another option?
I actually like the sound of that Ida Avenue property. Can I go ahead and take a look at
Great.
that one?
Great choice. Let me help you schedule a showing for the property at 2631 Ida Avenue. One moment while I set that up for you. Let me just check the calendar for available slots for a showing. The next available showing for 2631 Ida Avenue is tomorrow Friday at 9 a.m. Does that work for you, or would you prefer a different time? We have other slots throughout the day as well.
How about the afternoon, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Absolutely. We have a slot available tomorrow Friday at 2 p.m. Let's go ahead and book that for you. Could I get your full name and the best phone number to reach you at?
Yeah, my name is Robert, and the phone number is 123-456-7890.
Thank you, Robert. Just a moment while I lock in your showing for tomorrow at 2 p.m. at 2631 Ida Avenue. You're all set, Robert. Your tour is scheduled for tomorrow Friday at 2 p.m. at 2631 Ida Avenue. You'll be meeting with one of our leasing agents from Summit Realty Group. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. Looking forward to helping you find your new home. Have a great day.
Thanks. All right, so now that you've seen the demo, just going to quickly go over why this even matters. Why would this be a useful thing? And as you can see on the screen there, it's pretty straightforward. Missed calls equals lost revenue. The more calls you don't pick up when people call the leasing line, the more potential leads you miss out on, which means the more potential leasing fees you miss out on. So that's revenue. And for a lot of companies, depending on how much you charge for your leasing fees, that can be, thousands of dollars per month for even just one leasing lead. So you could be talking tens of thousands of dollars in revenue over the course of a year if even just one leasing lead a month you are able to, if you miss out on it or if you're able to capture that lead, that's 10,000, that's thousands of additional revenue that you would get. So that's why it's important to get your calls, not to mention, it's a better experience. Obviously your landlords are going to be happy because their properties aren't vacant for as long, and people who call into the leasing line, they get their questions answered and they get booked in for the showing, which is what they want. So it's just a win-win for everybody. More missed calls equals lost revenue. That's the important thing for property management companies. So what solutions have been tried, or what options do you have for this sort of thing? So the first one on here is voicemail. And voicemail system is just terrible. I've talked to so many property management companies who say, when I ask them about how they deal with their missed calls, they say, oh, we have voicemail. 70 to 80% of people who call businesses and get voicemail don't leave a voicemail. That's number one. So they're just missing out on a huge swath of the people who call and get voicemail. Additionally, of the people who do leave a voicemail, like that small percentage, an even smaller percentage you're able to actually get back in touch with, because there's this whole thing with like phone tag, and then you're leaving a voicemail on them. And then by the time you're able to get back in touch with them, they don't even remember who you are or why they called or what property they were into. Voicemail is just not great. And it's surprising how many property management companies say, oh, yeah, we have voicemail. We're good. Uh, Probably not. I mean, maybe it's working. Maybe you're satisfied with lower revenues, but it's not a great solution if you're trying to be the best property management company you can be. So the next one is these call centers, both the third-party call centers and the VAs. Those obviously answer your call, but those can get expensive. There's issues with training and hiring and making sure they know like local knowledge, that sort of thing. Uh, so those can work, but they do have their drawbacks, obviously. And then you also have the SMS based systems where people call in and they sort of have to go through like this kind of clunky system where they're just like inputting numbers on the keypad to indicate what property they're interested in, and they get an SMS, and it'll direct them to the website. So those are all the different options that you have. All of them have their drawbacks, but now what we have the capability to do is build these AI voice agents that can actually answer the phone and speak like a normal human, in normal human language, and actually have a back and forth, a normal conversation with the people who are calling. So as you can see here, they can field the calls 24/7. There's no hours limitations on these. There's no busy tones. They can field multiple calls at once. They can free up your staff to do other things. They never need to go on break or take a lunch. You can see they can handle both specific and general inquiries depending on what the caller is interested in, general FAQs. They can even qualify the leads, answer whatever qualifying questions you might have as part of your process, and then actually book in the showings into your calendar so that you have something set, the client has something set, and it's actually on the calendar, and then it can send whatever automation it needs to the SMS reminder system to get everyone on the same page. So before we get into it, just real quick, go over the technology we will be using. We've got Retell for our voice AI platform, Make for the automations, Airtable is going to be like our property database. The scheduling logic, we'll just use Google Calendar combined with some code running in AWS Lambda. And then if you want to hook up your Twilio phone number and do some SMS follow-up, you can also load in a Twilio number and some Twilio modules in Make to get all that set up as well. For the high-level flow of how the call usually goes and the way I've set up this agent for this tutorial is the prospect is going to call in. The agent is going to detect sort of what they're looking for, because when they're calling and inquiring about properties, they usually have a specific property in mind, or they're just more generally looking and they're not totally sure what they're looking for. So the agent's going to be able to figure out which one of those it is and route appropriately or call the specific function appropriately. It's going to, as you can see there, pull the matching properties from the Airtable depending on what they're looking for, answer any questions, like have some back and forth with the prospect about what might work, what they might be looking for. And then if it's a good fit, it can go ahead and move on to the scheduling portion and actually book in a showing for that property. All right, so now we are going to hop into Retell. I'm going to quickly go through the prompts, the nodes, what's going on. I'm going to show you how it integrates with make.com on the back end. And I'm not going to go too deep into this. There's plenty of Retell tutorials that you can check out if you want to get a lay of the land for the basics. I even have one on my channel. So just going to quickly go through this. As far as the prompts and the make.com scenario and all that, and even the code when we get to the AWS Lambda, all the links for those are going to be in the description. So, don't worry about specifically what's in the prompt. You can just take a look at those and look at it at your leisure. But we are doing what's called a multi-prompt agent in Retell, where we have one sort of general prompt here that gives general notes that the agent should follow in all stages of the conversation. And then in the two prompts. We have our answering questions stage and the scheduling stage. We have specific prompts for each of those stages that fine tune what the agent should be doing in each of those stages. So that's the general layout of what we're doing here. Basically, I just tell it who it is, who it's working for, how it should speak, how it should talk to the customers, its tone. You can customize all these depending on how you want it to speak to your own customers. It doesn't have to be exactly this and be super professional or nice and bubbly and polite. You can have it speak however you want. Then we got some notes there, just some things that came up during testing. A lot of times that's what these notes are, just to make sure that it speaks in an intelligible way. So that, like, for instance here, like the normal human language when relaying addresses, I don't want it to say like the address is 1235, it's 1235, stuff like that. So got these notes here to cover those edge scenarios. Hopping into the prompt tree here, you can see we have this answering node that again has its own prompt, and I sort of just repeat the context of where it specifically is just to make it crystal clear on what its role is. And then I give it a task, tell it exactly what it is aiming to do with these callers who are calling in. So in this case, the answering node, its purpose, its function is to answer questions about the properties. But like we talked about, it has to uncover what the customer wants, whether they're calling about a specific property or if they're just more generally looking. So if you remember from the quick demo I did at the very beginning, at first I said, oh, I saw a sign for the property on whatever street. I can't even remember what street I said. Chestnut, I think. And that was a specific request because I was looking for one specific property. But I could have also called in and just had like a general question, or just said, hey, like, I'm moving to the area. I need just something in this neighborhood, hopefully around this price range with this many bedrooms. Do you guys have anything? Or like, what can you help me out with that? Just a more general inquiry. So this node, this agent for this prompt here, is going to be able to determine whether it's which of those two scenarios. And obviously this can be fleshed out, just keeping things simple for this demo or for this tutorial. But I mean, there's a variety of different things someone might say when they're calling into the leasing line. We're just keeping it limited to these two potential options. But obviously, we could flesh this out and make it much more robust and able to handle more things. But anyway, once it figures out whether it is the customer is asking about a specific or a general property, it's going to call the appropriate function. So we've got the specific function here. That's where a person is asking about a specific function or a specific property. You can see it's passing in exactly what they said, like the one on Plum Street, and I'll explain why we do that in just a minute. We also have the general function, where we, again, pass in what they said in their own words. So originally I started building this out to ask to parse what the customer said into different arguments for these functions. Like, instead of just the customer request and have it be one long string, I would have multiple properties here, like what neighborhood are they looking for, what's their budget, how many bedrooms, do they need any amenities, that sort of thing. But just through testing and iteration, I found out that it's a more clean and scalable and robust setup to just have this agent maybe ask like one or two follow-up questions if the user's request is really vague. But then other than that, just pass in whatever they're looking for in their own words, because we're going to have some ChatGPT modules on the back end sort of parse that out and figure out what's going to be the best properties to recommend to them, as opposed to trying to within this prompt, like, parse it out into all these different arguments and the logic for that. I think it was definitely a better play just to have it pass what the user was requested for, like a couple of sentences, and have that be handled on the back end. So I'll show you what I mean here. We're going to hop into make.com, our scenario. Now we got a few things going on here. This is just the main webhook we are using to catch any function that the agent calls, whether it's the specific function, the general function. We've also got the appointment, the scheduling functions down here that we'll get into when we go to that node of the agent. But I'm just going to briefly run through what's going on here. Like I said, the templates are going to be in the description, so you can just pull it up and follow along with me if you want to do that. But we are going to first take a look at the specific function. So when a customer says, hey, I saw that for rent sign outside the property on Chestnut Street, is that one still available? They're asking about a specific property in that case. So what we need to do is figure out what specific property are they looking for, because it's highly unlikely that they are going to say exactly, I am looking for the property or information about the property at 5825 Chestnut Avenue. It's highly unlikely they're going to say that. They're going to say, I saw one in Hyde Park, or like, I saw a for sale or for rent sign on some house in Ida Avenue. They're going to say it in natural language like that. So we need to figure out what they're talking about and then look at the database like a normal human would and figure out what they're talking about. So this can be built out. Actually, let me show you the Airtable database first, just to see what we have going on here. So we've got a bunch of different fields here. Oh, looks like it's auto-refreshing on me. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different fields here, all the basic stuff: address, neighborhood, bedrooms, utilities. We've got a pets filter, and then the actual pets policy, along with a bunch of amenities that it could possibly have. And then over here on the right, we just have some natural language details about the property. That's where like a human could come in and say, what parks is it close to? What grocery stores? Just additional information about the property that you can't get across in some of the other fields. So this is our properties database that we have here. And what it's going to do in this make scenario, this specific scenario, so the prospect is going to say, I'm inquiring about the one on Chestnut Street or Chestnut Avenue, whatever they say. We are going to search the database for all the records, actually, all of them at first. We're going to return the address and the neighborhood that it's in. Now you can, if I was trying to make this for a client and I was making it more robust, what I would do is I would actually have a field in this Airtable, like a column in this Airtable database of kind of like this details field, but like aliases of what the property could be known by. Like if it's close to any parks or like landmarks, or it has some distinguishing physical characteristics, like it has a bright red door or something like that, I would put these in this alias field and also return that when I do the search records module. And that way, you know, if a customer would say something very vague, like, hey, I was driving down somewhere in Norwood and I saw this house with like this bright red door that had a for rent sign. Do you know what I'm talking about? Potentially, that could be a way to pick up what property they're talking about. It obviously wouldn't be foolproof, but that could be another way besides like if they didn't know the street address or like what street it was on. But anyway, we are searching all the records and we are returning all the records, but just the address and the neighborhood. So this is going to return all these addresses and then all the neighborhoods just side by side. We are going to aggregate those using this text aggregator module into just one big chunk of text. It's going to say property 1. Here, I'll show you. This is the bundle order position. You can see there's the number there. But for each property, it's going to do this. So we have 23 properties in our database, so it's just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 23. Then it's got the address and the neighborhood. Address dash neighborhood. So for each one, it's just going to have the number, where it is on the list, the address, and then the neighborhood. And like I said, you could put additional details in here if you wanted to help the agent find what property besides just using the street address. But for now, we're just using those two fields. Then what we're going to do is we have a ChatGPT module that is going to analyze what the customer said. So for instance, the one on Chestnut Street, along with a list of all the available properties. So just going to take this text here, load it in. We've got available properties. The caller said this in quotation marks. And then we're saying, which property are they referencing, and return your answer in JSON. There's also an option if it's just really unclear, can't tell, it can say, I'm unsure. And then based on what it outputs here, it's going to say either matched or unsure. If it has a match, it's going to actually pull that exact record from the database. And in this case, it is going to return all the fields, so all the information about that property. And then it's going to return just all that information about just that one property back to the agent. So again, we're searching all the records. We are aggregating all the property records into one big text block. We are feeding all that information to a ChatGPT module to reference. And then we're saying, okay, here's all the property information. Here's what the customer said. Based on what the customer said, what property do you think they're referring to? Like, are you reasonably sure that they're referring to? And then if it says, I found it, we're going to pull all that information for just that property and send it back to the agent. If it's like, I'm not sure, it's too vague, it's going to say, I'm not sure. It says, I'm not totally sure. It's going to ask for more details. And then when we go back into our agent here, if someone's asking about the specific property, now it has all that information. And like we saw in the demo, it's just going to say, hey, yeah, I found that property on Chestnut Street. It is still available. What information did you want about it? And then the conversation can proceed from there. They can ask further questions, which the agent now has the information, and then it can proceed to even scheduling a tour if they want to do that. Now, in our demo example, I did it intentionally where the guy said, that actually doesn't work for me because I need 2 bedrooms. Do you have anything else on the east side? And I used east side intentionally as well because that led into a general call to the function. We'll now navigate to the general function. And what this does, first you can see inlined here on the general function, we have a ChatGPT module. Again, we're passing just what the user said. So not any filters, not any specific arguments like they're looking for a specific neighborhood or number of bedrooms. We're just passing what the user said. For instance, I think in the demo I said something like, I'm looking for something with at least 2 bedrooms on the east side, and I have a dog, so it needs to be pet friendly. So we just passed that chunk, like that, those 2 sentences into the argument. That's what we passed. And what we have now is a ChatGPT module that is going to actually convert that, what the user said, into filters for this Airtable. So when we go and search the Airtable, we can filter for what the user said. So I'll show you at the bottom here. Here is the user's request. This is just exactly what the caller said they were looking for. And then the task for this ChatGPT module is to actually output an Airtable filter that is appropriate for what they said. So you can see here some examples. This is just the nomenclature for Airtable filters. Say if it absolutely needs a fenced backyard, I have a dog, then what we are looking for is this pets field in the Airtable. This has to be set to yes. And then we're also in the amenities, it has to include a fenced backyard because they're saying, I need a fenced backyard. And then this little and means like it needs both of those. Both of those have to be true for the filter to return true and for the Airtable to return that particular property record. So it's saying, does this equal yes? Is fenced backyard one of the amenities? If yes, then it could return this property. So you can see, you can browse this prompt here when you pull up the template. But yeah, there's just various examples here to give the module an idea. I do tell it to, like, it has guidelines for how to interpret the fields. For instance, if someone has a pet, that's going to be a very strong filter that almost always is going to need to be, the house is going to have to allow pets. It's highly unlikely that someone's going to leave their pet behind when they're moving. So if someone mentions that they need a place that allows pets, that's always going to be included as a field. This module does give ChatGPT a little bit of wiggle room based on, that's why we pass exactly what the user said, because they might say something like, I mean, my price range is this, but I'm pretty flexible. It's not a huge deal. You know, they might conceivably say something like that, not just for price, but for anything else. Like I said, I'm looking for something on the east side. That wouldn't be like a strict filter for like neighborhood, for instance. I've instructed it to not really filter that much for neighborhood. You can see it says like an optional filter there, and only include it if they say it's essential. Because there's two reasons. One is if a user says they're interested in a particular neighborhood, and they have these other ideas for what they want in their property, when you search the database, it's only going to return properties from that neighborhood. But what if there was a property from just one neighborhood over that matched all their other criteria and it was a perfect match, but it was just one neighborhood over? Then this wouldn't return that. It would filter that out, and it would basically be blind to that potential thing. So that's the first reason, is because it's just generally not going to be a great filter. The other things are going to be more important. But also because when we get to this actual recommendation piece at the end here, this ChatGPT module at the end, ChatGPT actually knows geography without searching the web for most major cities. For my city, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, it does just fine. I can ask it straight up. I can say, hey, what neighborhoods border Hyde Park, which is a neighborhood in Cincinnati? And it'll tell me exactly. It'll say, like, to the north is this neighborhood. To the northeast is this neighborhood. And it nails it. It just knows that it's in its training data. And I'm sure this is true for pretty much every major city. And even if it's not, what you can do is you could just include some quick context within the prompt itself to give it that context if for whatever reason that it doesn't exist for your locality. Obviously, you have to test it out and make sure it's accurate, but I found it to be, it does just fine on its own. It doesn't even need to know, it doesn't even need to search the web or have any additional context. It just knows from its training data, natural geography. So that's what we're doing with this ChatGPT module. We're actually outputting a Airtable filter that we are then going to pass. You can see we have the result there. It's going to be an Airtable filter that only searches for results for properties that match that filter based on what the customer said. And then from there, we're pretty much doing a similar thing. We're aggregating all the potential results into one text block. This time, as you saw, we're returning all the data, like all the information, and aggregating that into a text block, so it is a longer text block. And then for this ChatGPT module, what we're doing is we're giving it, we're telling it, what its role is, where in the process it is, and then we're saying it's going to receive the actual input, that what the customer actually said, plus the list of the properties that were filtered, like that met that filter. It's going to get a list of the properties. And then its task is to say, based on what the user requested, what's 1 to 5 properties that are really good matches, and then also explain why, so that like the retail agent on the back end knows sort of why it's a good fit and it can communicate with the prospect. And also include, just for reference, when it's available, as well as the rent. You can see here there's some notes that it should be flexible. like we talked about with the neighborhoods and with rent and things like that. The rent was sort of built into this Airtable as well because it allowed some buffer room when it was creating the filter, like a 20% buffer as well. But yeah, you can see this is where the magic of these large language models comes in, is because they can be flexible, they can understand actual meaning. It doesn't have to be like this precise language or precise code all the time. You can sort of understand just generally what someone might mean and compare that to the properties and return a recommendation because of that. So that's what we have going on in that ChatGPT module. And then we simply send that result. It's 1 to 5 recommended properties and why back to the Retell agent. And then back in Retell again, we're just having a conversation with the customer about, like, it has all these properties. It's going to be like, okay, I found some potentially good matches. Do you want any more information about them? What questions did you have? And you can obviously prompt it to answer additional questions or ask additional questions, like qualifying questions. But yeah, it'll gently guide the prospect to scheduling an appointment if they express interest. If it gets far along in the process, if all their questions seem to be satisfied, we will move on to actually scheduling the appointment. So we've got this edge here. That's how you transition between the states. You can see the condition is that the caller is interested in scheduling a showing. We've got the argument passed is just the address of the property. And then the scheduling prompt, we are reiterating what its role is and giving it a custom call flow that's different from this answering flow, and just saying how it wants to go about scheduling the appointment. So that is what we will dive into now. All right, so you can see here in the call flow for the scheduling agent, first step is just to confirm the property they want to tour. And then the second one is to immediately call the check availability function to see what times are available. So I'm going to go through this, just sort of explain what's going on here. I actually made a full length video about how to do scheduling and to make it really robust and make sure everything can be handled. This is like a very simplified version of that. So just keep that in mind if you want the full breakdown and the method to make it super robust. I have another video which I will link in the description. You can take a look at that one. But basically what we want to do here is we want to check the calendar for availability. So instead of just asking the user what day they have in mind or what day and time they have in mind, and then them just randomly saying a day, and then checking if that day is available. And if not, we have to ask them for a different day. Instead of doing all that, we are actually going to check the calendar first. That's what we're doing here. We are getting the free busy information from the calendar first, and then we're going to run it through some code, and we're actually going to give all the free time slots to our Retell voice agent up front. So it has everything up front rather than going back and forth and trying to picking whatever the user says, checking that, saying, sorry, I don't have it, going back, checking a different day, saying, sorry, I don't have it. We want to avoid that. So what we do is we just get everything up front from our Google Calendar. And what we do here is we take a look at our Google Calendar and we find all of the busy slots. So this Google Calendar actually outputs what days are busy. And then we are going to convert that into a JSON string because it outputs it as a list. We convert it into a JSON string, and then we run it through something called AWS Lambda. And again, I have a video on how you can use AWS Lambda to run custom code in your make.com scenarios. But we will take the busy times as an argument in our AWS Lambda function. And what it's going to do is it's going to then process that and output all the available time slots without the busy ones. So it's going to say, we basically tell our Lambda function, actually, let me hop in there. I'll just show you real quick. All right, so here we are taking a look at the function. And like I said, I'll put this in the description below. You can just find the code on GitHub. But what we're doing here, you can see we have a business start time of, this is 9 o'clock. This is 5:30 in the afternoon. We're setting the time zone. We're saying our time slots are just 60-minute time slots. You could change this to 30 minutes or, whatever. And then what it will do, here's the actual function itself. It will go through and it will find this event here. That's the information that gets passed from make.com. It'll go through that event, like for each slot in the event, and it will basically say we are busy during that time. And then for the next 5 days, what it's going to do is it will, if we are not busy during that time, it'll check each like hour by hour. And if we're not busy during that time, it's going to load that into the list as an available slot. So we have a sample output here. Today is the 17th. So it's actually starting on the 18th at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can see it there. And it just has each slot. 9 o'clock is the start time, and then 10 o'clock is the end time. And then again, we're starting at 10 o'clock. We are ending at 11 o'clock, and so on. I'm using a test calendar, so I don't actually have, I think I have like 2 busy times in my calendar. I think if you went through here, you could find them. But basically, it's just saying every one of these start and end times is like an available slot that we are just returning all from the output of this function. We are just returning it back to make.com, and then we are sending it back to ChatGPT, or to Retell, as saying these are the available slots. So yeah, we pass those back to the Retell voice agent, and we instruct it that it's just going to get a comprehensive list of the available time slots, and it is to inform them the next available appointment in natural language, ask them if it works. I went through this process in the appointment setting video, but it's better to just say the next available appointment is this, because the caller can just say, like, that works, that's fine, and then we just roll right on to the next step. And then even if it doesn't work, it has all the available times right there. It doesn't need to keep going back and forth and like checking again. It has them all loaded. And for something like leasing showings, conceivably it could be like, if you were a different type of business and you were scheduling like 3 weeks out, or you wanted to schedule an appointment 4 weeks out, this would be impractical to get like 4 weeks worth of available appointments. There'd just be a ton of stuff to throw back at the agent. But for something like property showings, you might only be booking out for like the next few days or like the next week at the most. So it's going to be able to handle the appointment slots and figure out what's available. If you want to do it. I mean, maybe you do want to schedule it out, and then you can see that other video for how you could handle that. But I just did it for this tutorial. We just pull all the available slots for the next several days and say, here's what's available, and then you just work with the customer to schedule an appointment. And then it's all pretty straightforward from there. We just get their name, their phone number. We call the book appointment function. We throw in what the property that they want, that information, as well as the time that they want in the ISO format. And then literally it's just one module here in make.com to book the appointment. We create the event using those 4 pieces of information. We got the address, we got the dates, we got their name and their phone number. And that's pretty much it. Then the call wraps up. It says, thank you. We'll send you a confirmation text, which I haven't included here in this flow, but you can definitely do that. Just throw like an SMS, a Twilio SMS module on there, or there's a couple other options you can use as well, but probably the simplest one is just one of those automated Twilio SMS messages to confirm the appointment with all the parties. And that's pretty much what we got here for this voice agent. That's the end of the agent in the tutorial. Now, there's a couple things that this agent, I didn't build it out to sort of handle. Like, for instance, in this, when it's looking for just general availability based on what the user said, like what if there's no properties that are returned by the filter? This just outputs 0 because there's no properties that match what they're looking for. You would need some fallback logic for that. You could potentially have it route again back to what the user said and maybe expand the filters a little bit, have another ChatGPT module down here, or just go back to the prospect and say, hey, we need some more information. We don't have anything that really fits that criteria. Is there anything else you might be looking for? Or whatever logic you want to build into that. Another thing I didn't really mention is that, we have this properties database. There's 23 properties in here, but I mean, if you don't have that many properties on your website or that are available for rent, you could conceivably just stuff them into the prompt, like all the property information into the prompt, depending on how many you have. Maybe if it's like 10 or less, you don't want to have it be too much, then it would start getting a little overwhelming. But I mean, if you don't have that many properties, you could see how it works for you, just stuffing them into the prompt, either this prompt or just the actual answering prompt here. And that way it can reference that information almost as a knowledge base, an in-prompt knowledge base, without actually doing all this stuff where it has to call these functions. It just has it right there within its prompt. That could be a good option as well if you don't have that many properties. Of course, the downside is it'll be harder to maintain anytime you'd want to change the information, a property gets leased or added. You'd have to go into the prompt and actually update it. So that's the downside with that, but could be an option. So just to recap, you now have the structure for how to build a 24/7 AI leasing assistant for your property management company. This can answer all calls. You don't have to worry about voicemail. You don't have to worry about spending money on call centers. You don't have to worry about missing any more leads because you're not able to pick up the phone. And you know why it's important, because missed calls equals lost revenue. The more calls you pick up for leasing leads, the more money you make. That's why it's important. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. This is just a tutorial. I mean, I didn't go full out building a whole SaaS product with this tutorial. Just wanted to show the basic structure, show some learnings that I had through my testing to see how it would work, the best way to sort of structure things with the backend module and all that. And like I said, I posted everything in the description, so you have all the templates and the prompts and all that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you got some value out of it, please like and subscribe if you want more content like this. If you want help implementing this in your business, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll put a link, a way you can do that in the description below. But yeah, that's it for this tutorial, folks. I appreciate you watching. You have a great rest of your day. Bye.